Today I'm going to paint a watercolour in Corel Painter 2019. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again. I've been playing around with Corel Painter and I've much more comfortable with it now. I have a watercolour drawer here that I've created. It's a custom drawer and I've selected a series of watercolour brushes from different palettes from the actual from the selections that we have here. If I go to 2019 brushes, we'll see that there's lots of different options for watercolour. There's real watercolour, there's I think there's digital watercolour, and there's just watercolour. So I've sort of combined brushes to easily get to them from each section. I've got a couple of erasers, a wet eraser and a dry eraser. I've got some papers to choose from. I've added a new watercolour layer. So I found if I was trying to do that from the layers, I would sometimes select the wrong one, and this is much easier. And I've got the wet entire paper instead of having to go up to the options. I think it's under layers to wet entire watercolour paper. So that's really cool. I'm going to do, I promised I would do a painting using a palette of colours that I mixed. Now, I didn't save the palette, so I actually had to go to the video I made, do a screen dump of the palette, and then re-import that in. That's why I've got these black lines down the side of it. But luckily enough, I was able to retrieve it, so we can do the painting. Now, looking at the painting or the photo I'm using, I've got lots of greens in there, but there are no greens really. Maybe, yeah, I can't see any really, maybe just over here perhaps, I don't know. No, they're all looking everything but green, purples, pinks. So it's going to be tricky, but I'm going to give it a go. A quick update, I crashed and burned miserably. I've spent 2 hours painting a watercolour, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I thought, I recorded it and everything. It was going to be the video. And I thought, you know what? I can't show anybody this. This is dire. So I scrapped it. But I've added a couple of brushes to my drawer. I now have a hard pastel. I've got a detail opaque acrylic brush, and I have a new favourite watercolour brush called the Grainy Wash Bristle. I've got that top left because that's how I'm going to begin most of my paintings. I am determined to do this painting with this limited palette. And I love this brush. I've got a layer with a watercolour paper, handmade paper texture on there. And I just love the way this brush sort of just adds these diffuse colours automatically. I don't have to wait for the paint to diffuse with the algorithm that you get with the wet brushes. I was struggling with that. But this one I really like. I like it a lot. And straight away, I feel that I've gone in for this very loose, not realistic at all, just a very loose wet in wet watercolour. And my limited palette seems to be working okay. In the first version I did that I scrapped, I actually sketched out the church first, but this time I felt that the sketching actually held me back and stopped me being as loose as I wanted to be. So I decided to not do the sketching and just go straight in with the painting. So I have this mix of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna and raw sienna colours that you can see in my palette, mixer palette to the right. And I'm just, I've got a video already produced that showed how I made that, which I've already said earlier in the video. And I'm just dipping into that for my colours and resisting mixing any colours up at all. And I'm still just using this one brush. I love it. It's really cool. I'm getting I don't know if you can see the detail in the grain in the video, but on the actual painting, it looks really, really cool. It looks very realistic, and I am very happy with it. And I love this brush, this grainy wash bristle. It is my new favourite brush in Painter, Corel Painter 2019. I guess by now you've realised I've actually bought Corel Painter. I got it on offer, so I saved myself. I got it at half price actually, so I thought I can't not get it. I'm still going to go for Rebel at a later date because I think that's got a really cool watercolour engine. But because this was on offer, I went for this. Now I'm using a pastel brush, hard pastel brush for this to put this church in, and I'm sort of trying to get it in one stroke. I've got it on a new layer, and I'm using the eraser just to clean up the edges a little bit, because as I say, I want it really loose. The first one, I was putting more and more detail in, and it was just going completely wrong. So this one I'm much happier with, much happier. So I've gone back to the watercolour brush again, and I do try a few of the others and then decide I don't like them and lift them out. I think this brush really gives the impression of a light, airy day, which is what I was trying to achieve, where the other one I got was more like a stormy day. So I'm just sort of putting the shadows in and the shadows under the trees. Very loose, not trying to be putting detail in at all. And then some more highlights on the top of the trees. And then the distant trees there. Put a little bank in. Still using this one brush. Loving the effect I'm getting with it. And then I use that same brush again to put in some reflections in the water. This bit that I'm doing now is where I really struggled with the first attempt I did. So I guess, from this, don't worry if you do a day of painting. I usually, if I do something really bad, I will have 2 more goes at it, and attempt painting 3 times. If at the 3rd time, I'm still not getting it, I think I'm never going to get this. I must be doing, either the subject matter isn't right or I'm not feeling it and I abandon it. But I usually am prepared to have 3 goes. So this is the 2nd attempt, and it's totally different to the first one. And I couldn't possibly ever show you that first one. I'm using the 2B pencil now to sketch in the branches of the trees. So it's sort of keeping it very light, not trying to put in heavy lines at all. I did sort of put these branches in and take them out quite a few times. I did a lot of that sort of undoing, which you can't do the same with real watercolour. So that was nice, that I could get the branches exactly how I wanted them. Now this I think would print out really nice as a small watercolour, maybe 5" by 5" on the shortest length, possibly. I was deliberating what to do with the foreground. I kind of wanted to put the leaves in, but I wanted to keep that same loose wash effect. And I was trying different things, using that same brush, putting in different grasses and changing the thickness of the brush. and the colour, and tried a different brush, didn't like it, eventually went back to it, and I started to get something that I thought, at this point I was thinking, yeah, I like that colour, that seems to be working well. Here we go. So I start to put in these wispy bits of grass, and I'm just feeling my way because I have no idea what I was going to do. I was still shocked from the complete failure of the first painting, and I didn't want to mess this one up. Otherwise the day would have been wasted, really. So here we go. I'm starting to feel it now, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is all right. This is on a different layer, by the way. Every time I sort of started something new, I created a new layer, so I could easily just delete it if I wanted, or rub it out. And I wanted to sort of lift out some of the colour for the leaves. So rather than lifting it out, I used the opaque acrylic brush. So I created a new layer on the sort of top of the watercolour layers and painted in these little leaves. So at the minute they look way over the top. But what I did, once I got them, I zoomed in, and then I went back to the watercolour brush and outlined them. And it's got this nice sort of soft diffused look, like it's been painted wet on wet. And then I just knocked the opacity right back of the opaque acrylic layer, so that it looks more like I've lifted the colour out a little bit. And at this point I'm starting to feel like I'm getting somewhere. So I'll continue. Well, I sign it, of course, so that probably means I haven't finished. I put the signature quite high up and into the painting, more so than I normally do, because I wanted it to be, I put that there for balance, really. But I am thinking now, sort of adding these few extra leaves, and I'm thinking that the foreground is not balanced with the distant ground. It doesn't look like it's in the front of the painting at all. So I continue with a few more leaves, just sort of back onto the opaque layer now, putting in that sort of white or sort of off-white colour, and just trying different things, undoing it, and then using the blender. I've got a blending stump on there as well, which I used to blend that down a little bit. Still thinking this foreground isn't looking right. It needs something. So I go back to this grainy wash bristle. I get some really strong colour and I start whacking that in, and I love that effect. And I'm thinking, yeah, that is it. I've cracked it. I've salvaged the painting. So there we go. My second watercolour in Corel Painter 2019. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.